Joining Skylar and I on this episode of Coding Imposters is Colby Leed, who went from the medical field to doing a coding bootcamp to landing a job in the tech market in one of the worst time periods in the tech market this year. So let's jump in, learn from his experience, and hopefully we can all go from coding imposters to working in the tech field as well. Welcome, Colby, to the Coding Imposters podcast here. You are indeed guest number 2. So if first is the worst, second is the best, Colby, you're apparently the best guest we're ever going to have. So
I mean, that makes sense. Here. Yeah, I believe it.
Do you feel like the best guest?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, it's kind of exciting because our first couple of episodes were just Skylar and I. Then last week we haven't posted it yet, but by the time this is out, it'll be out. Our first guest was someone that we knew from Coding Bootcamp as well that's still looking for a job. So you're, Colby, the first perspective we get, which I'm excited to talk to you. Someone that's arrived. You're in the industry.
Heck,
you feel,
yes.
I don't know, on top of the world, I'm guessing, right?
We'll go with that. Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as we kick things off, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started in tech, the journey to get into tech. I know you've sent me a couple messages here and there. It sounds like a pretty interesting story. So yeah, if you just want to give us maybe a quick overview of all of that.
Yeah, I tend to be really bad about doing quick overviews, but I'll do it.
Okay, no worries.
So for about 10 years, I was working in the healthcare industry between being a medic in the military and what's known as a phlebotomist in medicine. Okay. Just the jerk that stabs people to draw their blood.
I like that.
That's about all I did, really. But yeah, so did that for about 10 years and had been going to school to be a physician assistant because when I deployed, that was basically what I was working as anyway. So I was like, why not just go to school and make more money for what I was doing originally? So
right.
Started going for that. And then just, after like 10 years, kind of slowly getting burnt out dealing with just people in general. And
you want the introverted job behind a computer.
Yeah, well, it didn't help. I was usually like primarily in, I was always in the lab, but primarily in like the emergency department and stuff like that, where you're kind of seeing people at their worst, so they're not exactly the nicest and things like that. So yeah, it was one of those where it was like, okay, I'm here. Let's just do it and kind of get through it. And so I was looking for a bachelor's degree to go for to transfer into PA school. And I was like, okay, which one, if something happens and I fail out, can't get into PA school, what can I do that I can kind of fall back on and still use this degree that I would have spent money on? And just nothing sounded even remotely interesting, or it was like just super broad, like biology or something like that.
Right.
So I was like, none of these sound great. So I started kind of broadening what I was looking at and came across the UW's computer science course. And I was like, I don't know much about this, but it sounds interesting. And I know a few people that are already working as like software developers and stuff like that. So I asked them a few questions and actually took I think it was just like intro to programming class at the school I was going to for the PA stuff. And it was just a super basic Python. And I actually loved every second of it. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to switch and see what happens. So I took a couple more computer science classes that were Java based at the same school. Started to do the whole transfer to or switching to like computer science degree there. And just everything was going really slowly. So that's when I kind of used the combination of feeling like everything was going slowly and my daughter being born, kind of used that and the paternity leave that I was getting for there as a jumping point for transferring to, a whole new career. And that's when I started going to the boot camp. And yeah, got through that, did very well, but came out at like the worst possible time for trying to get a job in
no kidding. I thought it was bad for us, but from what I heard, at least the career services said that March was the worst 2023 that he's ever seen.
So,
and you were right around that time, right?
yeah, I graduated very end of December.
Oh no.
And that was literally like the week before we all graduated was when all of the layoffs started happening. So it wasn't bad, but like we had heard, I don't even remember, some companies had dropped like 11% of their total employees or something like that. So it's like, okay, well, this might be rough, but hey, we're brand new. Let's see what happens and go with it. And yeah, I was the one, I actually heard you guys talking about it on one of the earlier podcasts about the guy that set up the bot and was applying to jobs via that.
Sorry for calling you out.
No, I mean, I'm very glad that I did it, and it was set up as like super broad applications, but I think it did like 600 applications, a little over 600 for me. And then I was also doing my own because it was only able to do like easy apply on LinkedIn. So it was still fairly limited. So yeah, I was doing a whole bunch on my own and just trying every job board and thing that I could find. And then tried, I don't even remember, someone suggested it to me. Like, yeah, have you ever heard of this site called Upwork? It's kind of similar to Fiverr, but pretty much just
told
for
us about
developers.
That as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I gave it a shot, and I was just kind of messing around. I was like, this is kind of weird, but whatever, we'll see how it goes. And I think it was the first night that I started my account. And I think it was like the second contract that I sent my bid to was the one that I actually ended up getting the job for. So it was.
Oh wow! So it was like a contract to hire kind of deal, or what was that like?
So they called it contract to hire, and it basically is, but it's for a startup company that was kind of on the last legs prior to actually becoming live. So we were still in the build-up, portion of the whole app development. And it was basically me, one other developer that got hired on the same day with similar experience, working with another developer who's the lead developer. He's the only one that really has like significant experience, and he was basically just running all of the developers. And then one other working on that app specifically. And it was just I had no idea what I was getting into. They hired me for the worst stack for me in the whole boot camp.
Was it Java, or did you have a worse stack?
No, I actually liked Java. Java was like going into the boot camp.
So there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Everyone else I talked to, I didn't take Java, but everyone else I talked to, like that, I hate Java. Don't ever again.
Well, it was kind of, how you have like your first language that you learn when you're born is kind of the one that you're the most comfortable with, whether it's a stupid language or not. That's pretty much what Java was. Like, I sort of had some experience with Python, but it was that one little brief class. And then the other two classes that I had that were a lot more like actual programming were both based in Java. And so it was kind of like, I definitely wasn't a master at it or anything like that, but I was significantly better than Python or any of the other languages that we came across. And I had kind of felt like the MERN stack in general was very briefly touched on, like just brushed the surface of what it's able to do. And the pace of it was so fast that I was not like, I was able to acknowledge the ability of it, but I was not close to using it or anything like that. So that was kind of my write-off. Like, I'm glad I know this stack, but I don't care to like continue on with it because it's not going to be the one that I'm comfortable with.
Right. But it got you a job or some work, right?
It got me a job.
At least that's good, right?
And that's what I've been using the whole time since. So now I think, the MERN stack in general is kind of my more comfortable language at this point. But
so you made you made a bots that made like 600 applications, and you didn't even get a job with the bots. You actually had a job somewhere else.
Yeah, completely separate from that. Well, and I got, I think, in the 3 months that I was using it, I got like 2 or 3 replies for resumes from the bot.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
it?
Nothing
600.
came. Yeah, nothing came out of those replies. It was basically just the, hey, we got your application.
Jeez.
That's it. See ya, kind of thing. Yeah.
We've decided to go a different route.
Yeah, that's a very generic one that they give
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Pretty
This
much.
personalized note to tell you
Exactly.
that we don't like you. Sorry.
Pretty much. Yeah, you're not even good enough for us to think about. So bye.
I feel like in our last podcast when we talked about you, we had said that you got a job from the bots, or you did a bot and then you got a job. And so it's good to know that your bot actually didn't even work.
Didn't help at all. Yeah, no. I maybe gave me a little bit more range in the jobs that I was applying to that I probably wouldn't have on my own. But
Sure.
Right.
yeah, nothing came of it whatsoever. Every other like positive thing that I got was from my own applications and things that I filled out. So
Yeah.
if that helps anyone decide if they want to try to do a bot for it.
I mean, at
probably
least
don't
you're,
bother.
saving time, I guess, from, having to look through, because, everything takes time. And that's one of the
Yeah.
arguments that Skylar and I have. So I'm curious to hear from you looking back. How would you spend your time differently if you got to do this all over again? Because there's so many things like, do I go onto LinkedIn and look through all these things? Do I look at freelance like you did? Do I spend time just doing algorithms and networking? There's so many different paths, and I don't know, is it just random, or is there something you would have done differently?
I think the only thing that I really would have, that I would do differently now, I don't know that I would have even thought to do it differently then, was just try to have a bit more focus on the types of jobs that I was applying to and the companies that those jobs were at. Just to have a little bit more focus, like the kind of going off the idea that a lot of people have said, where it's better to master one thing than to be good at a whole bunch of stuff. And to me, that's kind of how it came off with my applications, was I was just like throwing moderate applications at absolutely everything rather than doing take the time to cater to the specific job that you're going for. And if you're going to take the time to do that, make sure it's a job that you actually want. Kind of thing.
Would you recommend that people know what they want to, like, what kind of job they want? Otherwise, like for me, after I graduated, I was like, I don't even care. I'm just gonna go to gun for like
just
whatever sticks.
A job.
Yeah, and nothing stuck. And then it was like, well, now I just feel like I'm burnt out. I don't want to do anything. It's like you kind of fall into that trap.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's hard to really say one way or the other, because I was exactly the same way. It's just like I don't know enough about programming to know what I want to do within that field or anything like that. So, I think, obviously that's the ideal if you can come up with that, but I know that it can be so hard to do that in the first place.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't know. I would just, if you come across something that you don't really know, I would say do a little bit of your own research on it, and then if it still sounds interesting, then you can maybe focus on that. But I would say the kind of what I was getting to before is just the better idea is to focus a little bit more rather than doing that super broad shotgun effect. And just hope that you can kind of a little bit more laser focus, so that what you are applying for is more, you're going to want it, even if it's the job itself you're not sure, but what you think you will be doing, or the company that you're at or whatever it is, that's what you want. And focusing on what you can bring to it and helping improve your resume based on that.
I think it's really solid advice. I think the part where I struggle, and I'm wondering if you guys have struggled with this as well, before you get a job, you're supposed to be working on these projects, right? So it's like, pick a focus, but at the same time, if you're building a project, then you have to do all sides of it, unless you're finding teams and people that you can contribute to, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to stick to MySQL and I'm going to just ask around until I can find someone that just needs some MySQL help or something like that. But if I'm working on a personal project or group project, most of the time I'm like, okay, I really do like backend and I want to focus on that. But if I'm going to deploy this thing, I do need a front end, and maybe I don't spend as much time on the CSS, but I still got to make it at least functional,
Have
right?
something.
And then I got to go learn about deployment. I don't like deployment. I don't know if anyone likes deployment. I don't like deployment, right? And so it's like, I still have to learn this if I want to actually get this launched, to put it on my resume, things like that. Skylar, Colby, do you guys feel that as well when you're working through these things?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's hard to, well, and yeah, knowing, kind of going back to the focusing, knowing what to focus on and when for that is, yeah, infuriating. But what I was trying to do was basically, I would set aside a certain amount of time where, you know, I'm going to be doing programming stuff for these 4 or 5 hours. I guarantee there's no way I'm going to be able to sit for 4 and 5 hours to fill out resumes and, you know, apply to a whole bunch of jobs without just getting either pissed off or burnt out or whatever it is. So I would do like an hour of applying and then an hour and a half of working on my project. Try to get where you're not just like stopping in the middle of something, obviously. So you know, when you have an idea, you can kind of work through that whole idea. But just trying to kind of break up what I was doing within that time that I've got allotted for programming.
Skylar, how about you? Have you found any kind of focus or a way to focus on something?
No.
Okay, cool.
Focusing, like, I think before Colby jumped on, Luke and I were talking about how I come from a sound engineer background, and so trying to find a way to mix coding and audio together is probably something of focus. But I just recently kind of came to that conclusion like a week or two ago, where it's like, okay, I need to start, you know, honing in on what that looks like. But I've kind of done a full stop on projects and stuff as I'm just kind of going, okay, I know I don't want to make a recipe page. I know I don't want to, you know, like all the stupid things that aren't going to connect at all to what my background or what the focus that
my
I want.
Recipe site? Come on, Skylar.
Didn't everyone do a recipe site? But it's like the total, like, the focus needs to be something, but then it's like, okay, how do I want to go about that? And that's where I'm at. I'm at the thinking stage.
And I think that's valid, because I think part of it too is, as I'm looking back now that I've been out of the boot camp for almost 2 months now, I'm starting to feel a little bit more of, this is what I actually like to do. But I don't think in the boot camp you don't even really have time. I mean, you can kind of feel out a little bit like, oh, like maybe I don't like CSS, or maybe I don't like Python as much as I did Java. So Colby, for you, did you start to find a focus? When was that focus? I don't even know. How long was it till you got a job, and were you able to over time feel more and more focused towards something?
So I got the job like middle of March. So it was about 3 months of like solid applying and working on stuff and all that. And before I got the job, my focus had been on Java. And I really liked what we had gone over in the boot camp with React. So I wanted to kind of try to combine the two together, because it makes sense to me to have a really strong back end like Java and then just a really versatile front end like React. So I was working on a project that was doing exactly that, and basically just, you know, creating a Java API that the React would work with. But in terms of actually focusing, I didn't really, even still, like, I like pretty much all programming. It's everything that I've come across so far has been a lot of fun. And that's one of the things that I actually really like about this job in particular, is that it's a tiny company. So, you know, the 5 developers that we have are doing a little bit of absolutely everything. So it's the only thing that I've really focused on with this over anything else was just that I'm using JavaScript and TypeScript all the time. That's about the extent of it. And React when I'm doing front end stuff, but I'm primarily focused on back end for what we've got. But yeah, I wish I could say that I had come up with more of a focus than that.
Sure.
But that's really been it so far. And even that is more just circumstantial than anything else.
Yeah, you're forced to.
Yeah, pretty much.
What was your imposter syndrome like jumping into a job and with a language that you didn't even really enjoy or like?
It's not that I didn't necessarily like it. I just the logic that I like more is the logic where it's very like type based, like Java, where it's you know exactly what type of data you're working with the entire time because it's been defined from the very start of using it. So that was kind of a hard adjustment for me to make, where it's like, okay, I literally have no idea what this could be, but we're going to use it, so let's go with it, kind of thing. Yeah, I've just felt like an imposter almost the entire time until fairly recently, and even that, it's hard to tell how much of the lessening of the imposter syndrome is from actually getting better, and how much is like, because I fully admit I rely on ChatGPT fairly often.
Oh yeah,
that was gonna be our next question, actually.
Yeah, it's like the most obnoxious crutch ever, because you'll get really used to using it for a certain thing, like I've never used this before, so I'm going to start prompting ChatGPT and see what it can come up with. Yeah. And then you just kind of slowly keep prompting it more and more instead of doing your own thing from it. So every once in a while I have to like, okay, I'm not actually learning anything from what I'm doing right now with ChatGPT. Sure. So I got to stop. I'm going to go back to like the very first thing that I got from it, because it does a really good job of breaking down its whole thought process basically for doing this stuff. So
totally,
it gives you the opportunity to learn from it really well, but it can be really easy to just ignore all that stuff because it gives you all of the answers. So it's, for me, it's been hard to decide if it's, I'm actually improving, or if my ChatGPT prompting has just gotten better, kind of thing.
But is that
probably
not
both.
Also improving? It's like using the resources you have, right? I don't know. Like part of calculus was like, how good are you at your graphing calculator? It's like, right, yeah, it's a tool. Like, do I really understand? I don't know.
doesn't matter as long as you're getting the right answer, right?
Well, I'm curious though. For your actually getting into the job, was that an issue? Because it sounds like you're in a work environment where they're okay with that, but a lot of times I'm seeing interviews where like, okay, you have to, don't click away from this page, we're going to do this test where you can't click away, you can't use ChatGPT or Google. And so it's like one of those weird things of like, yeah, those algorithms probably don't feel like they're an everyday part of work, but that's what they're being used for interviews and tests and stuff. So I don't know, what was your interview process like that? And using resources, ChatGPT, other things.
So the interview for this job in particular was not the typical tech interview at all.
Okay.
The app is based towards military and veterans.
Oh, cool.
And the founder, who was the one that I interviewed with, is a retired colonel, and he liked the fact that I was prior service basically and a veteran, and I think that was a big part of it. He basically was just like, so what do you have experience with? And I was like, I've done a bit of work with APIs, and I've used the merge stack that you are showing me that you guys are using for your project. That's about it. And we talked and chatted a bit, and he was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna ask my lead developer what he thinks, and you're probably going to start on Monday. So I was like,
whoa,
okay then.
And now you're just sitting there mad, like all those hours I spent doing algorithms were for nothing.
Code was worthless.
It totally goes like back to you. In order to succeed, you always have to kind of bring a part of your past with you to kind of transition. Like you can't slingshot straight into a new chapter of your life with no prior, with taking nothing from the previous chapter. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure. Well, and even if half of it is just, your networking, a lot of it is just, you know, the right people and you can get a job that way. But yeah, I definitely have come to learn that, don't rely solely on your new chapter that especially if you're just starting, like you've got nothing there anyway. So yeah, you got to bring something to the table that you already have experience with. And, you know, I guess it's hard to really use that for military, but it was something that I could use. So
yeah, totally.
it worked. Yeah.
Well, it almost sounds like it does it help you in the building the project though, having that prior experience with the military. Obviously I don't know what the app is and the crossover there, but
yeah, not really. So the app is a real estate app that is primarily focused around helping military members find a home around like the base that they're going to be moving to.
Interesting. That sounds really cool.
It's the hard part that when I first describe it that people have is like, okay, so other than the focusing around military, what is different between that and any other, you know, real estate app that
right, like a Zillow or
exactly
Red, whatever it is, or
and that to me the part that makes it exciting is not as much about the fact that it's military, which obviously that's nice because, you know, when you have to move every 2 years or something like that, it can be a huge pain to find a house consistently. But we actually have it where our CEO describes it as a dating app for real estate. It's hilarious.
Yeah, swipe left, swipe right.
Kind of, yeah. So
that's awesome.
You get the list of houses that you want to look at in the area that have met your criteria that you've defined, and it's a little less black and white than a lot of other apps are, where, you know, I want 2 bedrooms, I want a 2-story, blah blah blah. We have the app is called MustWants, and so you just define the things that you must have compared to what you want. And so you must have 2 bedrooms. I want 4, kind of thing. And then we'll rate the listed houses based on how closely they match your defined criteria. And that's kind of generally where the dating app part of it comes in. But to me, the cool part is more the connection that you have to the other people. So you can have a collaborator as a user on the app. So like if my wife and I decided we wanted to move somewhere else, we would have our own separate accounts on the app, and we would call each other our collaborator and connect via our emails. And then anytime I liked a house, she could see that. And you can put little notes on what you like about the house, where, you know, that second bedroom is stupid, I don't like that, but I like the rest of it, kind of thing. And she'll be able to see that.
Right.
And then
that's awesome.
The other benefit is that if you connect to like a real estate agent, they can also see that. So all of that
that's cool.
Back and forth that you try to have for the, you know, that 10 minutes that you're with your real estate agent normally, you don't have to try to remember all those things at that moment. So as long as you've got it in the app, they can see it, and they can see all of the stuff that you like and that you don't like, so they can help, you know, find something that matches what you actually want a lot better.
Nice.
To me, that's the cool part.
Yeah, no, it sounds really interesting. It's one of those, you know, what are we doing different than the competition? Here's all these extra features. And it sounds like you guys got a good plan moving ahead. And I'm a little bit curious to go back to what we were talking before the podcast. Even we were asking you because you let us know that you're in a CS degree now, and Skylar's first response was, "Why are you doing that if you already have a job in tech?" and and especially from the point of the imposter syndrome that we are talking about earlier, is part of that. Yes, I have a job, but I'm still relying a lot on ChatGPT and other resources, and I really want to know the depth of it and get away from that imposter syndrome or learn more. What's the thing that's driving you forward in that?
I mean, that's definitely a big part of it. In order to get through the degree, you have to have at least some base knowledge that I definitely don't have for the most part currently. And especially in this field, I think the more that you know, the more you can succeed anyway. But kind of like what I was saying during that original conversation, is it's more about just opening up more avenues for, if I'm not with this company for the next 20 years or something like that, I'll have a lot more options. And even if I am with this company, like you're talking about, I'll know more to how better ways to help the company improve what we're already doing, hopefully.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah. That's the whole point of spending the money and the years and time to go to the school, is to, even if it's not helping this specific company, to help whatever company that I do go to and help myself.
Skylar, I know you've debated that same thing as well, and you're even looking into following up with a bachelor's in computer science. And I've known others from the boot camp that are starting to look at the same. So yeah, I don't know. It's just like an interesting thing. I think a lot of people are listening, and we've all been to boot camp, and it's like, is it enough? Like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it enough, but is it enough to get me where I can learn, or do I need more education? And Skylar, we haven't talked about this for a while, so I'm curious. Have you thought more about doing a bachelor's and going back to school like Colby's doing, or is that out of the question for you?
No, I've thought about it. I just realized that I need to pay off my school debt before I go into more school debt.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Fair. Yeah.
But it's also that same like where I always struggle, like, was boot camp the right decision, right? And I kind of want to ask Colby that too, and Luke, like, where are you guys at with, was boot camp the right decision? Because now Colby's going to school for computer science. Luke, I don't know where you're at there, but I'm like, computer science gives me a bachelor's. I don't have one, right? I have a barber license, and that's the most schooling I've ever done. Like, where do I go when I want to go further? Like what Colby was talking about, like I need to climb up that ladder, and in order to climb up the ladder, I need to get a bachelor's degree. And like I grew up in the whole, like, you don't need a degree unless you're going into like a doctor or a nurse or something. Like you can do whatever you want nowadays. Like as long as people see that you're worth the work or whatever, then then you're fine. You can go do it. But now it's like, well, I'm at this point where no one's looking at my resume. Yeah. No one's giving me interviews. I'm burnt out. And everywhere I look, everyone's like, go to college, go to college, go to college. So, Colby, what do you think? Is boot camp worth it for people who haven't yet, or is it?
I think a lot of it depends on the time that you have currently available, the time that you can potentially wait, and just the overall time frame for what works for you and whatever your situation is. Like, I don't think I could have gotten the job had I not gone through the boot camp, primarily because it gave me that little bit of experience with stuff that I definitely hadn't touched. And honestly, I probably would not have without the boot camp. Like I wouldn't have looked into the MERN stack at all on my own. I would have just stuck with Java and focused on that. Maybe looked into like React or Angular or something like that for front end stuff. But I think it helped significantly speed up the process of getting through that transition from what I was doing in healthcare to getting into the actual tech field. Now, it comes down to being worth the money. That's, I don't know. I haven't quite ruling still.
There's no great answer to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
It didn't put us like super far back or anything like that. So it wasn't as big a deal for me as it probably would be for some other people where, they don't have someone else that is bringing in income or something like that. So it's whatever they get paid for the boot camp, they have to pay back entirely on their own and stuff like that. Like, if you don't have a job, you're the only source of income, or, you're not sure if you're going to get a job at least. So had I not been married, there's literally no way I could have gotten into the tech field without doing the boot camp, or just spending an insane amount of time, studying, doing programming entirely on my own.
Yeah. That's definitely the hard part, is the timing of it. I mean, that's what I've thought about too is like, yeah, it sounds nice, but for me, I'm the same boat as you, Skylar. It's like I don't have my AA even, so maybe there's an accelerated program, but you're still talking 2.5, 3 years probably minimum. The price of that, the dedication to that, and I don't know. I just see these stupid, funny TikToks that make me mad, and they also make me laugh. But it's like this. It's always this like 21-year-old who's going to college right now, and it's like, here's how to get a coding job in 2023. Don't go to a boot camp. Go to college. And it's like, if I go to college, I wouldn't graduate till 2027, so I'm not getting a coding job in 2023. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. You're kind of skipping a whole section of time. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I don't know. And part of me is that same thing of, man, I went to boot camp. I feel like I learned a lot, and I feel like I can keep growing on my own. So I'm curious, Colby, how far are you into your program? Do you feel like you're learning more in your bachelor's, or do you feel like, actually, based on what I've done in boot camp and now my real work, I kind of already went over all this material?
So I'm going through WGU, which is kind of a self-paced degree, or the school is pretty much entirely self-paced. So you go by like terms, which is about a 6-month span. And I'm on the first term. I literally just started in June. So I've only gotten through a few courses, but it's been so far so I took like a network and securities course, that the network itself portion of it wasn't as useful for me as it might be for someone who's, doing IT specifically or network setup or anything like that. But the security stuff was definitely interesting because it kind of pointed out a lot of the, issues that we might run into with our own app. The problem was it doesn't really show much about how to prevent them unless you're working in like networking or something. So I was like, I don't know. I like it, and looking forward to the other courses that I will have. I think a lot of them are going to be like perfect for what I'm doing currently and super useful for later on. But so far the couple classes that I've taken have not been particularly relevant, but
sure,
close enough that it's like, okay, I can see the value in it. But I actually, if you're someone that doesn't have a lot of time, or your time is sporadic, so it's harder to go to like an in-person class or something like that, I actually generally do recommend WGU just because it is self-paced. Like I've heard of people passing classes from the time that they open up the class and have it available to them to taking the exam to basically say that they're completed like a week.
Whoa.
Yeah, so
just
theoretically
burning through it. Wow.
Yeah. If you got the time and can focus that heavily on anything, you can get through courses really fast. I don't have that time, so I have not been going through courses super fast.
Fair enough.
But it's definitely possible. So if you have the time, it's a good way to go about it, I think. But partially the reason that I went to this particular course, other than having a little bit more flexibility with timing and with trying to do kiddo and job and all that kind of stuff, I definitely needed that. It also is not particularly expensive for each term, and I get to use my GI Bill from the military, so I'm actually not paying anything for the schooling. So
that's incredible.
There's your answer.
Yeah.
Why'd you choose it? It's free.
It ends up being free. Yeah. And theoretically,
awesome.
like if I had the time to do it, I could get almost the entire degree done within like this first 6-month period.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Whew.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds really cool. I think either way, even if it's still up in the air of like, hey, am I really learning a lot more? I think one of the things I've thought a lot about is the bootcamp is great for getting that surface level knowledge, but you don't really have time to sit in that in-depth knowledge anyways. That's kind of, I almost rather would have had hey, we're going to do a bootcamp instead of giving you 3 different languages. Just, we're going to sit down for 9 months going into one stack in depth. Obviously they're just trying to give you a taste of everything, and So there's pros and cons to both, but that's what I wish I would have had, is just let's just sit into one thing and really nail down to that a lot more than we did.
Well, and there are boot camps that do that, but yeah, it's
Sure.
hard to know before going into it, especially because people doing the boot camp generally don't have much experience in the field anyway.
Totally.
To know that, yeah, I should just focus on this one thing and get to know it really well. But
yeah, I didn't know anything. I had like 2 months of self-teaching, and then sure, this sounds like they know what they're talking about.
Fairly common. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, and even still, I don't know that I would go back and like have done a boot camp that focused on one, just because going for like I would have gone for a Java boot camp, whatever else came with it. It would have focused on Java, and I do like Java. I still would love to have a Java job, but yeah, I just definitely wouldn't have ended up in the situation that I'm in currently. And based on particularly March, how that just insane, job search was, I don't think that I would have wanted to only have that one focus for job applications at that time.
I mean, either way, it's encouraging to us, your story, because you were even in a worse market than we were. And
totally,
it happened. And that's what we were talking about in an earlier episode. And all it takes is that one opportunity, that one network, that one whatever. And all of a sudden it changes around.
A little bit of luck going your way can make a big difference. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot about the job stuff, and makes sense. You're your first guest that we actually get to talk to who's made it, right, in some sense. So I'd like to just wrap up the last couple of minutes here, talk a little bit more about the mental, emotional side of we touched on imposter syndrome, but I'd love to hear, even though it was only like 3-4 months for you till you got your job, what was that experience like with the imposter syndrome? Was there big mental block times that you wanted to give up? How did you just deal with those emotions and the mental block of it all?
I think it helped knowing several people that were already working in the field. I didn't really have bad imposter syndrome issues during that time. Then it was more just the frustration of spending all this time and energy focusing on job applications and, doing all of the stuff that they tell you, where search by keyword for every little thing in LinkedIn to get exactly what you want. Find, the top 3 most likely people in that company to be able to, put you in the right position to get at least past the stupid resume bot that they use. And it was very, very disheartening just getting so little response. The only thing that I really had was just enough other people to talk to that were going through either the same thing or like we're already in the industry and like, yeah, sorry, dude, it sucks for everybody right now. Only a couple of people had like actual job security during that time anyway. And, a buddy that had been working for the same company for 8 years was still not quite sure, if he was going to be able to stay, kind of thing. So yeah, it was, while it was really disheartening and, your morale just hits rock bottom and then some when you're just not getting anything at all. But having that little bit of knowing I wasn't alone in that situation and knowing enough about the overall cycle of the tech industry, it was, okay, stuff sucks right now, and I might not get a job for the next year in tech, but it will happen. That was kind of that little push that kind of kept me going. And then, of course, you get that random email from the person like, hey, you want to set up a meeting in like an hour? Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm not doing anything. Of course I do. But
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Skylar, I don't know your takeaways, but I think mine is, it sounds like having mentors that are already in the industry, because we've talked a lot about having friends that are in similar situations of the boot camp and being able to share experiences, which is helpful. But I think having someone that's already there to be able to share, like, hey, it's rough for us all, you know, you're doing fine. Like, don't stress about it. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. I don't feel like I have that necessarily in my life yet. And I think that that sounds like a really helpful tip that you were able to have during that time.
Yeah, and pretty much everyone that I knew around that time that had a job already were people that I had known for a really long time. And that one in particular was one of the ones that actually like kind of pointed me in the direction of going towards programming and the coding dojo specifically, because he actually graduated from there too. But yeah, other like I, you know, my sister-in-law works for another very large company. I've got someone else that works at, you know, the top tier companies that I didn't necessarily talk to them a lot, but I talked to them enough to know that literally everyone was in that same boat. Like almost no one had like legit job security. Even still, it's hard to like legitimately say anyone has job security, because you never really know.
No.
So
totally.
It's a whole new ball game.
I want to respect your time here. I know you got some dinner going here soon. Skylar, any last thoughts before anything that stood out to you from what Colby's been saying that you want to share?
Yeah, I think it's important, and we say this pretty much every episode now, but it's, you're not alone, and everybody feels what you feel, and it is okay to feel that. And like it's like a common theme, right? Like, instead of coding imposters, it should just be like, you're not alone. Like
yeah,
like that's what that is. And then I think too, we talked a lot about at the beginning of just finding a focus of what you like, and trying to dive into that, because a 500 resume bot isn't going to get you somewhere, but something focused will, you know. I think that's probably a key takeaway.
Awesome. Well, Colby, it's been amazing having you on and picking your brain and hearing your story. I know I've taken some things away, and hope other people that are listening do as well. As we wrap up, anything that you want to shout out, where can people connect with you, either about your app or just in general, that you want to shout out?
Yeah, just typical. If you're interested in real estate, go ahead and look into the MustWants app.
Is it live yet, by the way?
It's
like an
it's
alpha
live.
Or something? Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
no, it's live currently. Just went live officially in like June, but we're still definitely doing the normal troubleshooting and stuff like that as things come up. But yeah, people can go on. Agents and lenders can get their own subscriptions, and doesn't cost anything for a usual home buyer to get on there and look. So it is, like I said, focused primarily on military. So unless you're looking at that, you might not necessarily find what you're looking for. And we are still connecting to a lot of different states for what's called the MLS, the multiple listing services, where we actually find the homes that are being sold. But yeah, anyone, feel free to look at it. I think in general, it's just kind of a cool app. And like I was talking about, you've got a lot of different changes from what is the norm for real estate apps. So I might just be biased because I work there, and I've done a lot of this stuff with it. But you know, I think it's cool.
I'm glad you like what you're working on. That's always a good thing, right?
It's definitely fun. It makes a big difference when and getting to work on every part of it makes it even more fun. So yeah.
Sweet. Well, we'll make sure to drop all your links in the description, including the app. If people want to check it out, that would be great. And Colby, thanks again so much for your time, and we appreciate you joining us.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of Coding Imposters. We'll be back next week with another episode. And please send us your feedback or just comments of how you're feeling in dealing with Coding Imposter Syndrome. And we will have all that info in the description, whether you're on Spotify, YouTube, We will have all the information to connect with us on LinkedIn, Discord, email, all those good things. So thank you guys again, and we will see you in the next episode.